Alors, est-ce que je peux commencer ou pas? Ladies and gentlemen, this is my pleasure today to welcome you all to our presentation of the outcome of our research. As you may remember, we have created Infravision, which is a think tank dedicated to infrastructure. Back in 2024, 2025 was really the opportunity to open up the research and the think tank to as many members as possible, having in mind that we had been doing research for many years with Altermind, and through those different research, we had a chance to actually come across economists, industrials, European policy makers, and all these people at the end of the day aren't that talking together, and we felt, okay, let's try to figure out a way of having a proper space of dialogue and discussion, because at the end of the day, we are all together working in a sector which is going to shape the future of the way we operate as a society. And when you think about the whole big megatrends affecting our societies, having demographics really going down for Europe, going up for the south of the world, having, aging population, having urban world becoming more and more the reality of our societies, having 55% of the population living in cities nowadays, and targeting to reach 70% by 2050, and having in mind that our sector is also responsible for 75% extraction of natural resources, but also materials, and generating 75% of GHG emission. At the end of the day, we are very much going to face all the challenges of our future society. And for that very reason, we thought we should definitely create a space of discussion, because we will need all together the best brains-based ideas and how to think out of the box to solve many issues and create a new future together. So the thematic that was chosen this year was on the future of cities. One of the great ideas that Altermind brought to us was, maybe as we are going to brainstorm on the future of cities, we could organize a contest, and in that perspective have a chance to get the views of young, bright minds, providing their perception of what could be the future of our cities, what would be an appropriate city. And we launched this contest. It was an amazing success. We actually got in contact with 250 different universities worldwide. All continents were actually represented. We got 96 proposals from everywhere in the world. And today we have those students being with us in the room. Those from Bolivia, unfortunately, are only connected remotely, so I will have to speak in Spanish for them, because I don't speak in English. And we will unveil during the conference the outcome of the contest. So guys, bear with me. I know and the pressure is high, and you will discover today during the morning who are the winners. There are 3 prizes, so each of you will come back with something, but the ranking is yet to be discovered. So it's my pleasure today to introduce you to this conference. As a reminder, there were a number of already podcasts. We had also panels, conferences, and today will be structured through keynotes, different panels. We will have also a presentation of how the Olympics were actually transforming the city, and how culture can actually be a major layer of transforming a city. And then we will have a wrap up at the end of the morning, by Christophe Béchu. Unfortunately, we won't have Sébastien Martin, who's actually caught on other major issues, let's phrase it like that, because as you all know, we have some vivid debates on the budget, which is actually keeping our ministers very busy. So it's my pleasure to actually welcome Virginijus Sinkevičius, member of European Parliament and former European Commissioner for the Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, who's going to start this conference with a keynote speech. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you this morning. First of all, let me start with the thank you word to Vauban, to Infravision Altamind for a very positive topic. Topic which gives a bit of opportunity for us to look into the future, because infrastructure has always been much more than just the pipes, roads and concrete. It's been a catalyst of transforming societies. And today, ahead of this event, you will have a set of excellent speakers who will look into different angles of how truly cities' infrastructure can not only transform, shape societies, but ensure that we are able to face multiple challenges that currently putting an enormous pressure, not only on infrastructure, not only on our cities, but on our societies too. And let me start maybe with a bit of more negative tone, or I'd say looking into a set of reality that we are facing at this very moment. Approximately 75% of Europe's population lives in the cities. That means 350 million people. And these cities, they are major generators of Europe's economic output. They drive innovation, shape quality of life for hundreds and millions of citizens. And yet, the infrastructure on which they depend day to day, and infrastructure is a bit like, I don't know how to say, like electricity, when it functions perfectly, nobody cares really about it unless engineers and so on, but the citizens, they think, well, it's given and it should be functioning perfectly like that every day. But when something goes wrong, when you're stuck in the tube, when you're stuck on the road, then you think about the infrastructure, why it's not working, what's wrong with it. And much of this infrastructure, it was built in the 50s and 80s, and it's now reaching or exceeding its operational lifespan. And water systems, transportation networks, energy grids, waste management facilities, they all face aging, degradation, and increasing inability to meet contemporary demands. But the top of that, the pressure, of course, comes not only from age, but also climate change, which strikes with relentless force. You see Venice every year sinking more than predicted, around 6 centimeters. Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Rhine Basin, constantly facing floods danger. And the beautiful Paris, which hosted the Olympics, but also now is the place where you experiencing extreme heat waves of over 40 Celsius degrees. According to European Environment Agency, estimation that climate-related damages have already cost EU over 650 billion. And meanwhile, social inequalities, they also are embedded in infrastructure. In European cities, especially those the most vulnerable ones, they have a very little choice. They cannot live next to the park, sometimes next to even the metro, and they face even increasing pressure from the water or air pollution. On top of that, interconnected nature of urban systems means that when one fails, very quickly you see the other following, sort of a domino effect. A power outage during an extreme heat event compromises water treatment. Transportation disruptions, they impede emergency response. And these are constant cascading principles that we face in our cities. And the price of inaction is staggering. Without transformation, climate change alone could cost Europe trillions of euros by 2050. Traffic congestion in major cities, they impose billions in lost productivity. And of course, aging infrastructure requires constant expensive maintenance, while at the end of the day, unfortunately, delivering a diminishing results. And this is the reality that we face. And of course, on one hand, we can see it as a bleak picture. On the other hand, I would see it as an opportunity, and that's why I was starting with the thank you note for this positive topic, because we really can look into the future, where we have an opportunity to shift our perspective fundamentally. Because embedded with this crisis lays perhaps the greatest urban planning opportunity in the modern Europe's history. Because approximately half, 50% of urban infrastructure Europe will require to build by 2050, and it hasn't yet been built. So urban land is projected to grow substantially, and we have yet to construct or fundamentally transform half of what will exist in the near future. And this is not a constraint. On contrary, please, let's look at it as a canvas. And we have already made infrastructure mistakes that will plague us for decades. And it's very difficult to change what has been done wrong. It's, of course, much easier to work on a new. We built car-dependent cities, locking us into unsustainable consumption patterns. We created siloed utilities that doesn't really interact with each other, especially if you look at the digital infrastructure, but also electricity, water. And unfortunately, we've managed to design transportation systems that divided communities rather than actually connected them. We cannot undo, of course, those mistakes immediately, but we can design the next 50% of urban infrastructure entirely differently. And the returns, they justify investments. World Bank analysis shows very clearly that the strengthened resilience and low carbon development delivers strong returns in 96% of scenarios, with benefit cost ratios exceeding 1 and net present values in trillions. And it's not only this sort of mercantile view of returns, but it's also about how people are going to feel within the city. So adaptive cities, they integrate infrastructure systems, and that's the key. Because siloing them, of course, is going to put enormous cost on top of us very quickly. Energy transport, water, digital networks, they must be coupled. And EU energy market analysis shows that sector coupling could reduce emissions in transport, buildings, and industry by 60% by 2050. And this is one of big chunks of the puzzle that we are solving as regards the climate neutrality. And we have already great examples in Helsinki, in Copenhagen. I love the example of the Malaga Metro, which extension of it was completed just in 2023, with project costs for around 310 million. European Investment Bank supported it. But most importantly, it doubled its ridership. And the key question, why was it? The answer is very simple, because every decision embedded accessibility. So it's fully accessible to all. 100% of stations are fully accessible for people with reduced mobility, parents with strollers, elderly passengers. And that extension, of course, was the one seamlessly connected with commuter trains, with bike sharing, e-scooter networks, and most importantly, of course, reasonable and affordable pricing. So to transition to this vision, we must overcome the fundamental mismatch between long-term infrastructure need and short political cycles. France now knows very well what short political cycles means, with the governments coming, going. Hopefully, this deadlock will be broken, but in the cities you have a little bit different story. Nevertheless, infrastructure planning, it's 15, 20 years. A subway system exactly takes that long to conceive, fund, and build. And yet the political mandates, they last between 4 and 5 years. And a mayor elected today, high chance that not necessarily going to be in the office when the project reaches completion. So this temporal mismatch systematically incentivizes, unfortunately, inaction. And overcoming this requires government's innovation, long-term urban strategies must be embedded in institutions that transcend electoral cycles, such as the EU's urban agenda for the EU and multi-level governance frameworks, because these are central. Most critically, mayors, they are key people because they are empowered, first of all, as a champions of long-term thinking. Unlike national leaders that are quite distant from urban infrastructure, mayors live daily with the results of infrastructure choices. They are accountable to constituents who depend on working transit, clean water, safe streets. So the accountability and the proximity makes mayors natural advocates. So important are the advocates for that, networks like C40 cities, Euro cities, Alliance for Sustainable Future. They demonstrate mayors' powers when coordinated and facilitating peer learning, accelerating adoption of proven approaches. Now, of course, let me end this with a very practical question that the mayors often ask: where the money will come from? And I won't be looking at the whole perspective of up to 2050, but now we live in an important moment. Not only national budgets are being discussed, but also European Union future budget is being discussed. The first proposal is in. Of course, we don't know how it's going to end after all the negotiations, but we can have a look at 2027-2034 multi-annual financial framework with nearly 2 trillion allocated across 7 years. And that, of course, provides unprecedented financial architecture for urban transformation. First of all, of course, the backbone of that is the cohesion funding, which is now allocated over 330 billion to European regions and cities. Crucially, member states have successfully secured a minimum 15% of cohesion funds to be earmarked specifically for sustainable urban development. And less developed cities in transition and regions, they will benefit from co-financing rates between 40 and 85%. But there is always a trick. When those money are on the table, you have to have competences to use them. And with the cohesion funds, the picture is not very positive. We are at the end of the current cycle, and approximately of around 40%, even less than that, are actually of cohesion funds being used. So roughly 324 billion from the previous period is unused. If you look at the cases by the member states, Italy has used only 5% of its funding. 25% they have kind of allocated into projects and so on, but they haven't been touched yet, and only 5% has been used. And the major thing is the mismatch of the competencies. The further you go from the capital or the larger city, the more difficult is the absorption. But that speaks both ways. I think that's a clear message to Commission to make it more easable, more flexible, more accessible, those funds for the local governments, but also a message to local governments that, of course, we need to look for ways to exchange the best practices in order to use the funding. Secondly, of course, InvestEU, which will mobilize over 400 billion, with 20 billion specifically targeting sustainable infrastructure window. Third, Connecting Europe facility that continues as the EU mechanism for trans-European infrastructure, even so it's looking much more into outside cities connectivity, but I think cities can have a tremendous opportunity here, especially regarding the trains connection, where very often it's still, you have cases in Europe, especially eastern part, central part of Europe, where trains are not well connected. And then just transition fund with the almost 20 billion to support regions and cities transitioning from fossil fuels dependency. Here we still have, unfortunately, coal-dependent regions. And of course, this funding will be allocated exactly there. At the local level, of course, cities must establish a vision up to 2050, being backed by 20-year infrastructure strategies and then 5-year implementation plan. It must create interdependent task forces within the structures that will break the silos, but most importantly, the support from a national government that will ensure inclusivity, and from the start to the end will try to break the short political cycles. I want to conclude with a positive note. We, as I said, have an enormous opportunity in front of us, and I'm pretty sure the speakers after me will paint a positive picture where those opportunities lay. Because as I've said, yes, on one hand, 50% that we have built facing enormous pressure, but we have enormous opportunity to build another 50%, avoiding mistakes, learning from the mistakes that were done. Because at the end of the day, cities, infrastructure, it's not only pipes, roads, but at the end of the day, it's about people. People who live there, who thrive every day. And as I said, when it works perfectly, nobody even notices that. But that's probably the main goal to be achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sinkevičius, for those opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. Welcome to this panel entitled Building Cities for the Long Haul, Urban Infrastructure at the Core of 21st Century Challenges. Now, as Gwenola just said a few minutes ago, cities today are facing a convergence of pressures that will define our collective future, mainly demographic change, of course, escalating climate risks, as well as the persistence of social divides, both within and between countries. And infrastructure is indeed at the forefront of those challenges because they embody the systems that sustain our cities and our economies. And when they fail, the ripple effects are immense. In this context, future-proofing our infrastructure is urgent, but it's also a tricky task. One, because the investment gap for infrastructure is massive. Just to give you a statistics, according to the G20's Global Infrastructure Outlook, there is a $15 trillion gap between the world's current investment trajectory and what is needed by 2040 to meet global infrastructure needs. And second, our panelists just outlined that as well just a moment ago, we need to overcome what we call the tragedy of the horizon, this tension between short-term political goals and cycles and the long-term demands of infrastructure and climate adaptation. Now, in our panel, in line with the report that was conducted by Infravision, and you will have access to it right after the panel, there will also be a QR code you can scan to have access to it online. We will examine in this panel the implications of the megatrends that are shaping our urban future to identify which ones are perhaps the most disruptive and find ways forward. For this discussion, please do welcome our distinguished panelist, Mr. Reuven Carlyle, former Washington State Senator, Jacques Darcy, Director of the European Investment Fund, Peter Haupt, CEO of Optimus Tower, Austria, and Antoine Picon, Professor at Harvard University. Please give them a warm round of applause. Anyway, please do join us and have a seat. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this fascinating conversation. Maybe let's start with the big picture, if you will. Jacques, I'd like to turn to you first. The EIF operates in almost every European country and across multiple infrastructure asset classes, and that's from transport to digital. So perhaps from that vantage point, what do you see as the top, let's say, 3 megatrends shaping the future of urban infrastructure?
Is this on? Yeah.
Yes.
For us, it's difficult to really single. I sat down with the team yesterday to decide, and we had a hard time. But they elected. So first, it's energy efficient and even carbon neutral buildings with renewable energy. So that came first. Smart mobility, and in particular, public transport. And also cross-border infrastructure when it comes to transport, and then AI, artificial intelligence, and digital infrastructure. Within this, there's a very intense race at the moment to build data centers, but we have many questions as to the sustainability of that, the environmental sustainability, and also the colossal amounts being deployed in that area. And will those infrastructures last that long? Because quantum computing could change everything, for example. So.
Thank you. Antoine Picon, you're a historian. You've been studying this relationship between technology, society, and also architecture for several years now. From a historical perspective, perhaps, are there any examples in the past of societies that have really achieved and successfully adapted to major societal or environmental challenges? And if so, what can we learn from them today?
Yeah, there are actually not many, but there are a few examples. You could go back to the Roman Empire and the way it succeeded in providing water to its cities. You could go to the Inca Empire and the way it managed agriculture in pretty difficult settings. Perhaps closer to us, the Netherlands. And the dramatic challenge of rising water, far before climate change issues, etc. So there are a number of examples, I would say, with a few lessons perhaps to be drawn. One would be, the need for flexibility, but at the same time, a kind of institutional permanence, I think, which is definitely becoming a challenge today. And probably also, I think pretty much all these examples tell us that we should learn from crisis instead of being petrified in front of them. The Netherlands is a good example. It has known crisis still from the 17th century to the 20th. So that would be probably what we should learn from history.
Now, Reuven, as I said, you're a former Washington State Senator. What are the infrastructure projects that are moving forward in North America and perhaps beyond that are giving you confidence that cities will be able to move forward and adapt in the years to come?
Well, as is general for Americans, I think I have to just go to the core of some of the real issues. And I think the real issue isn't just how we roll out a given infrastructure project. The real issue is this global wave of populism, the deep impact on the sense of disequilibrium at a human level that we're seeing. The fundamental issue of our time, I think, is representative by the urban-rural divide. It is symbolically represented by the challenges that cities face. And so infrastructure is, as our introduction said, it's just about real people living real lives. So I think some of the infrastructure challenges that we're seeing in the United States are about this fundamental addiction to decentralization of how the money flows. The disconnect between the ability to plan and how you actually have to pay for it. So we have, in my state, in Washington State, we're a unique place in that we're the global headquarters and home of Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks, Boeing, Costco, T-Mobile, Expedia, a number of global players. So we have a deep sense of commitment to quality of life. The challenge is that we have literally 2,000 special purpose taxing districts. So we have public infrastructure projects in cities around the United States that are going at the speed of light. There's no question that there is a deep sense of commitment to them. And there's a lot of optimism in some of them around rail, around hyperscalers and data centers, because fundamentally there's a recognition of the externalities of integrating energy and water and a number of other issues. So there is optimism and there is a lot of positive examples. The challenge is that we have, in this wave of populism, we have a real disconnect around the perception of who's paying. And so those are some of the real issues, I think, that we're facing in the United States that I think is symbolically represented by the disequilibrium that we're seeing in our electoral politics.
Peter Haupt, I'd like to turn to you. As I said, you're the CEO of Optimus Tower Austria. It's the country's largest independent communication infrastructure provider. From the private sector's perspective this time, and especially perhaps focusing a little bit more on digital infrastructure, how do you see the future of cities evolving?
Bright. Based on what Reuven said, real people are living real lives. And to looking into the future, let us have a short look back. We did this yesterday evening. It was my pleasure because Reuven started his career also in telecoms. And what we have achieved in the past decade or in the last 2 decades, whatever, there was no 3G, there was no 4G, there was no 5G. We had these small mobile phones, cellulars. We could barely write SMS, and that's it. And today everybody has a smartphone, everything is connected. Can you imagine living in a house with no coverage? Even if it's as nice as the 100-year-old building here in Paris or in Vienna, unimaginable. We have glass fiber at home, 1 gigabit, whatever. Can somebody remember on a kilobit, kilobyte, megabyte? No, not really anymore. Huh? No. And this has been done in the past decade or 20 years. So if we look at this, what we have achieved, and if we look into the future, turning to the next 3-4 years, multiply what we have seen in the last 10 years by 2, and you will see what we have in the next 3 years. Energy, gas, everything is available. But living in a house, I mentioned already, working in an office space with no coverage, it's impossible. The prices will decrease for buildings in Vienna where there's no coverage. So we switched digitalization from the outside to the inside of the buildings. This is one of the steps we have ahead of us to cover. But where are people? There will be coverage. No coverage, no people.
So infrastructure must be designed, of course, not only for tomorrow, but we're understanding for the next generations, for our children, for our grandchildren. So what it means that we really need to make sure today that the infrastructure designed and built today will remain fit for decades to come. And as you said, things are changing at such a rapid pace. Reuven, maybe from your experience, what is happening today in North America, and what are some of the best practices, let's say, in design and construction, but also in governance, that can ensure new infrastructure will indeed stand the test of time?
You know, in our state, I'm very proud that we are the only state that has binding enforceable commitments to net zero and the policy framework to get there. We're very closely aligned with California politically in many ways in terms of infrastructure projects. We're integrating our transportation network relative to electrification, relative to renewable fuels. You know, 6 or 7 years ago, renewable diesel was 2 or 3% of the market in California. Today it is 70%. That's because of a state-level policy. So you have market and policy alignment on the decarbonization of transportation. You have market and policy momentum on the decarbonization of the built environment. Market and policy alignment regarding renewable fuels, and that's for maritime, aviation, long-haul trucking, energy storage, industrial decarbonization. All of that's driven by our cap and invest carbon pricing and California's. We're linking our carbon markets with Quebec in 2027. So we have raised about $3.4 billion the last 3 years under our carbon pricing program that I was very proud to be the sponsor of. And that is investing in infrastructure. It's investing in quality of life. New ferry system. We have the largest ferry system in the United States. We're investing in free transit for youth, all young people in our 8 million person state. Young people 18 and younger can ride any train, any bus, and any ferry free of charge, paid for by carbon pricing. We have another example around the industrial decarbonization of large-scale emitters, and the transfer of those dollars is fundamentally about acknowledging the externalities of pollution. And so where you have policy and market alignment, you have real momentum. That, I think, is the issue. It isn't just the West Coast of the US. It's also in the proverbial red states. We have the highest growth of wind and solar. We have the highest use of battery storage. So what we have is a disconnect between the signal and the chaos politically and the market embrace and the market momentum associated with really compelling public investment in public infrastructure.
Now, Peter, how can we embed long-term thinking in the design and the commissioning of digital infrastructure when, as we said, it's evolving so rapidly?
I think it is already embedded, but...
maybe further embedded then.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Infrastructure itself is not only related to the structure of a city. It has always to do with the need of the people living there and working. So don't get me wrong, if 57% of the people are already living, as we have heard before, in the cities, we should not oversee that there is a huge part in the rural area as well. But what we need is scalability or flexibility regarding the networks. if we have a network in a city, it should fit to the demand of the people are living there. So there won't be any city of the future without the network. It's invisible, but it has to be there. And let's take a vision or an assumption. Will we have that many supermarkets in a city in the nearby future? I don't know yet, because maybe your fridge is doing the ordering for you.
Right.
You're away from home, your fridge is ordering because your network is that strong. Maybe we are smiling when we're looking back 1980, something like that, 640K for an IBM computer, and we thought this could be enough for the rest of our lives. Now your fridge, even not ordering, has a higher RAM. And the funny thing is, as long as there is a demand, we will see a growing network.
Right.
So the city of the future has a stable, huge network, glass fiber, coverage up to 100%. Wherever you are connected.
Right. Jacques, the EIF plays a critical role also in setting standards in Europe. What are the best practices, would you say, you promote today to ensure infrastructure investments are sustainable, are durable over the long term? And maybe are there some that could apply to the rest of the world? I'm thinking about emerging economies, for instance, who are facing very specific challenges, mainly strong exposure to climate-related events.
EIF, Article 2 of our statute says we should further and pursue European objectives. And so that's the Green Deal, which is being discussed in Brussels as we speak today. So it's a critical day in that sense. So all our investments in infrastructure are aligned with the Green Deal. Targeting, I remind us, all of us, 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, and carbon neutrality by 2050. So that's a really ambitious target. ESG governance objectives we apply to each of our investments, and also PPP, public-private collaboration. We think that's it's critical to align both. So we're there to not to impose, but to try to sway the private sector to go in this direction. When it comes to outside Europe, this is not us. We don't invest outside Europe. It's our parent company, EIB, European Investment Bank. But by and large, they apply the same standards. In terms of the very long this tension between long-term of infrastructure and how fast things are moving, we have two areas that we're exploring actively. One is sobriety. There's a lot of how do we acquire capacity now? How do we use less capacity? Happy sobriety can be achieved in many areas. And the second one is nomad versus sedentary. And because of climate change, because of population change, and because 50 years seems like a very long time, we may have many things to learn from the nomads, how they used to do things and how they do things today.
So, Antoine, I'd like to have your take on this. Many cities around the world are, of course, experimenting many different projects. We spoke about the potential of China's sponge cities and how it can really increase the resilience of cities. There's also the example of Singapore, which is really at the forefront of vanguard in terms of smart cities.
The sponge. Let's start by the sponge city. It's really an idea that emerged in the 2010, which is very typical, I think, of one of the big challenges that is emerging regarding infrastructure, which is the irregular nature of a lot of regime. That's to say, we're going to enter a world in which we have sometimes not enough water and sometimes too much water. So the sponge city was really to address, what happens what to do with storm water that traditional networks cannot cope with. So it's really a, solution playing on many things, green roof, parks, a lot of parks, unsealing soils more generally, etc., etc. Sponge city is the Chinese version. There are other versions in Australia, in the US, etc. But what they have in common, I think another important aspect is to combine, artifacts and nature. Natural solutions play a huge role. Green infrastructure is essential to deal with this kind of problem. Singapore, for me, Singapore is also interesting because it faces huge challenges, sea rise, but also, a drinking water issue, which they have addressed using desalinization, but also, water treatment, etc., etc. I think for me, what is interesting is the combination between physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure. Singapore is a kind of paradise for monitoring what happens in networks, etc., etc. But this is always combined with taking into account the physical dimension of infrastructure. So I think, we have probably to learn from the sponge city-like solution how to combine nature and artificial and infrastructure, and perhaps from Singapore this other combination, which is physical and digital. And the future is actually not only digital; it's actually really about the merging, about the synergy between these two dimensions.
Now, let's keep on talking about, sharing experiences. Reuven, have you seen other projects, perhaps in other places, in other parts of the world, emerging economies that could inspire infrastructure stakeholders in North America and Europe, and perhaps vice versa?
Absolutely. I think one of the big shifts in North America and in the US and Canada, I think, is the last few years, is there's this profound acknowledgement of the power and the value of evidence-based global best practices. I would say a handful of years ago, there was still an attitude of not invented here, just a deep institutional arrogance that if something hadn't been figured out locally, it really wasn't to be imported. And I think there's just a profound shift. Part of that's technology, part of that's just awareness of the world. But on some very real level, that shift has taken place. And I think there's a curiosity about evidence-based global best practices. You see it in design. You see some of the students here, are sort of super passionate about urban design. You see those best practices that integrate in nature-based solutions, that integrate energy and water, that integrate in design how to affect real people living real lives. In New York City, they have that walkway that was built along the waterfront that was an old dilapidated railway. And you see that all over the United States and Canada now, just wildly popular projects around rail in terms of repurposing. The concept of circularity, the concept of tree canopies, just small, medium, and large projects, and rail, and so how rail projects are rolling out. And then I think finally, I don't think we should miss this central concept that our work is the decoupling of economic growth from carbon footprint. And that's where those best practices are really profound. So the Nordics, Denmark and Sweden, some of the learnings, the circularity of the heating systems in their built environment. So those are some of the best practices that I think that are really gaining huge momentum. So that's why I'm incredibly optimistic about not just design, but how infrastructure projects are being viewed as really taking those best practices and bringing them to real people.
Now, we just spoke about the challenges, and of course, addressing those challenges is going to require investment and at an unprecedented scale. As I said, there's an infrastructure investment gap, and also the cost of inaction is actually prohibitive. I think, according to a World Bank report dating back to 2016, without adaptive measures, climate-related disasters could cost cities up to $314 billion annually by 2030. Peter, what is your overall view on this, and what do you think is needed to close this infrastructure investment gap?
Okay, prognosis on a larger scale has always to be like that, because it should be a wake-up call. Mm-hmm. It should shock us, because, ladies and gentlemen, there is a task in front of us. This is a start, this can be a start, but we want to hand over where we are living right now to our kids. We want to live with them. We want to live with our grandkids, and life expectation is growing, so maybe our grandkids. But at a certain moment, we have to hand over where we are to the next generation. And this needs to be prepared. And I like what Antoine said before, it has to be a collaboration between nature and what we are doing. Let's call it artificial part. And because we need the nature. When we're talking about cities of the future, we're not talking about only buildings and structure and energy and whatever. We're also talking about green areas, forests, whatever. We will need it. Nevertheless, we want to be connected there, of course, but there has to be nature in our life. So it's kind of a wake-up call for me, right. and we have to react. And we did. And this is what I like, what Vauban did in our case. If we build a site, for example, or if we acquire a site on the market, this site is for a future network. Because until it will get on air, it takes 12 months, 24 months. It takes a lot of time. And this is already preparing the future, which is ahead of us. And I mentioned it before. For me, it's bright because we are starting to turn what we have achieved so far into something what we want to have or live with our kids and grandkids in.
Right. Jacques, on this question of this investment gap, how is the EIF helping bridge this gap?
We invest money, but there's, it's very little compared to the needs. Wherever we look, there's huge needs with all kinds of projections. One of the keys in Europe is to align how the different European institutions to synchronize to the extent possible how EIB, EIF, the Commission, and so on deploy the funding, but also the national operators who operate also are very important. One of the key areas that comes, to mind every time we discuss, particularly with the private sector, are rules, simplifying regulation rules. The weight of rules is very significant, but that cannot be done by simply dismantling. Okay, let's do away with 2/3 of the rules, because rules also bring consistency and a systematic approach to things. So we need to somehow do a smart deruling, achieve that. There's social infrastructure is also key. There are quite significant social implications to infrastructure decisions that are taken today and that last for decades. Maybe one last topic that we're looking at is we hand over to the next generation, but also the population in Europe is aging very rapidly. And so that has quite heavy implications for what type of infrastructure both are we handing over, but also we need to use longer for, where we have labor shortages of people able to operate or deploy that infrastructure, but also a different type of, lifestyles. So that's that's an area that we talk about, but in terms of how do we invest in that is a question mark to us.
Peter, did you want to add something? Because I see you're agreeing with Jacques.
Yeah, I'm absolutely agreeing with Jacques said, because when you grow up with digitalization or digital things, look at your kids. They can handle your smartphone like they were born with it. And they are. If I look at my mom, it took me 5 years to get her on a smartphone, and
kids swipe when they're 1.
And she's ordering food already because she doesn't want to go to the supermarket anymore. And this changes, and then the living areas has to be changed, has to be adopted. So there are a lot of things. Thank you very much for this comment.
Now, Reuven, I'd like to go back on what happened in 2021. The state of Washington passed the Climate Commitment Act, the ACC. Now, this is a cap and invest law that requires major polluters to progressively reduce greenhouse gas emissions by purchasing emissions allowances. So maybe tell us a little bit more about the CCA and how it's helping mobilize financing to adapt cities for climate change.
So our carbon pricing was based upon California and Quebec. It was, if you look at emission trading systems, there was a fascinating article in Nature, the journal Nature.
No, I think it's working. Just
okay. There was a fascinating article in the journal Nature about a year ago in which they did an analysis of 100 policies associated with emission reductions. And they found that a cap and invest carbon pricing and emission trading system is the single most economically efficient way to reduce emissions. So this concept of global best practice. So basically asking 120 of the largest emitters in our state, industrial emitters that emit 25,000 metric tons, to purchase allowances. And there's a cap between now and 2050 that declines. So those price of allowances goes up. And the reinvestment of those dollars into the quality of life examples that I gave is incredibly representative of how to help pay for infrastructure. It's economically efficient, and it forces companies to make a fundamental choice. Do we just buy allowances and effectively pay this tax? Or do we go out and buy a new boiler system, a new energy system? Do we improve the built environment? So the economic efficiency that we're seeing. Now, the politics of it is very important because, as you can imagine, the use of those proceeds becomes very competitive. There are other states that are seriously exploring this because they desperately need funding mechanisms. So we see the circularity of the dollars, the externalities of emissions being quantified for the first time. And as we prepare to link with California and Quebec, I think what you see is the 80-20 rule at play. The emissions that you see in transportation, in industrial, in the built environment, and in a number of other smaller categories, agriculture, opportunities for regenerative agriculture investment. So how those dollars are spent to really improve people's quality of life around affordability, lowering utility bills, and then big important examples like wildfire mitigation, which is a big issue in the Western United States. So it's a new funding source at a time when funding sources are under enormous pressure. We cannot continue to bury people in the United States system with property taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, and business taxes that really are carved out for political reasons. So we don't have an economically efficient tax system. This is one of the few taxing sources that has a direct nexus between the externalities of emissions and reinvesting in both further decarbonization, but also in quality of life and affordability. And so that's why last year we had a vote of the public of our state to repeal the policy that the opposition party in our state, the Republicans, put on the ballot. And it was defeated. So the effort to repeal the policy was defended by 62% of the people in the state of Washington. So we outperformed Kamala Harris. We outperformed everyone running. So that meant there were conservative Republicans who voted to protect the carbon pricing because they were seeing direct nexus of value in the benefits. Now that's an outlier policy, but in the United States, you see a desperate need for financing that has a nexus. And that's, I think, one of the fundamental problems is that people don't feel value for the taxes that they're paying. And that's why the rage and the anger and the populism associated with affordability is so extreme.
And that's true not only in the United States. Antoine, taking a step back, how do you see the broader landscape evolving, and what are the lessons that you've learned from those examples regarding the cost of inaction that I spoke about earlier?
Well, I think we have multiple examples in history. Jared Diamond wrote a bestseller on those questions, and among the classic examples we find Easter Island and the problem of deforestation. Closer to us, the Dust Bowl, evidently, or even closer, what happened to the Canada, Newfoundland fisheries, cod fisheries. Perhaps a couple of lessons. The first, and I think it's good, especially in the US context, science matters, and we should listen to what science is saying. And today there is sometimes a tendency when scientific results are not exactly aligned with politics just to disregard them. That's a huge mistake, and history confirms that. The second thing is people matters, and it's very nice on paper to be implementing solution, but from the Dust Bowl to the fisheries, from farmer to fishermen, what do you do with people? Which means that you've got to find processes which are deeply political. And I think what history teaches us is by the end, it's science plus politics, which is, a very virtuous combo, but actually one of the most difficult to put in practice. And we are definitely, facing this difficulty today.
Now, in the Infravision report that you'll have access to after this plenary session, there's quite a lot of attention that's given to digitalization, and we started talking about it. Peter, could you perhaps tell us a little bit more about initiatives that you undertook at Optimus Tower that show how digital technologies can reshape the broader infrastructure, and what your company is planning for the future?
What we do right now is something nobody can see because digitalization needs an underlying infrastructure. Ducts and cables, for example, the power supplies for each site. So on every single site we build, we have an empty duct for glass fiber for future projects. Whatever we do is already scalable for the future. And I think this is important in all the areas where we have to think about. And second part is environment. Building sites has become a little bit different as it was 10, 15 years ago. And therefore there's a lot more consideration on environmental things which needs to be considered for the future, like rebuilding and concrete basements and so on. What we do internally is we are building digital twins of our towers that we can use them for other customers or make access of our data easily accessible for others. And keyless access to our sites and having all the space on the mast available by pressing a button. But what I see more important here is, and we're also using AI for contracts and all these things. This is nice. But what we need is this kind of educational shift in the way we think about things. Sorry, is it me?
No, I think.
Sorry.
Digitalization.
And what we need is this shift in thinking about we approach things for the nearby future. And what I see with the next generation, and we are hiring them already, is that they bring this kind of change and they are willing to do so. And this is what I see is more important. By changing our attitude will change our future. Not only technology. Technology will follow, or sometimes it will be the first one who will be there to have a network and you can build a city or whatever. But what you need is people living there and thinking the way how a new city should be like.
And Jacques, from what you see in Europe, how are investors factoring technological evolution into today's infrastructure design?
I think that the main trend today is that buildings are interconnected, so they're no longer standalone entities. So it's like as if you were in a forest or in a jungle.
It's a web.
It's a web, and the building is connected with transport and with with living, work, and so on.
Facilities.
What we're seeing in our some of our investments is on the one hand modular or reconfigurable infrastructure that can serve different purposes depending on time of the day, time of the year, what have you. And then the other one is mobile infrastructure. Is well, there's a fire, I can move the infrastructure to where there's not a fire until the fire is over. Similarly with water, there's a flood, I can move the infrastructure more easily and so on. So we do see some trends on that level.
And that's a topic we'll be also discussing in the next roundtable. Antoine, I'd like to go back to your work as well on digital technologies and urban infrastructure. It shows their transformative impact on cities. How is digital technology changing infrastructure's role in shaping social interactions and everyday life?
Well, I think we're already in the middle of it. Infrastructure has become, more responsive, communicating with people. It's also, it offers new possibilities, take transportation, mobility as a service approaches have, become quite common all over the world. So I think the change is already there. I think the real question now has become AI. What are we going to do now with AI? How is it going to change further things? Perhaps I've grown probably, my book on smart city was 10 years ago. Now I'm more concerned about how do you, with climate change challenges, how do you really address risk. You know, the digital doesn't like water, the digital doesn't like heat, and we're going to live in a world in which floods and heat waves are going to be more and more common. So I think issues of resilience, I think, is also, I would say AI and resilience are the big questions these days.
Now we have a couple 2 minutes left. I'd like to give you a minute each to just try to give your key message, the key message that you would like the audience to remember after this panel. Reuven?
We're living in a time of profound disequilibrium, and we have to stay grounded in real people living real lives. And I think the essence of quality of life comes down to the quality of infrastructure, but also, of course, the human and the social license and the dynamic of healthcare and education and all of the aspects of quality of life. We can fundamentally decouple economic growth from carbon footprint while we get improved quality of life for people. Those are not inconsistent. California has reduced its carbon footprint 20%, while it's grown economically 80%. The EU has reduced by 32% while it's continued to have economic growth. So we can decouple that, but we have to do it with the human dimension. We have to stay deeply grounded in risk, as you said. Take for one brief example, you have coffee, Starbucks sells coffee, climate change affects heat and altitude, which is impacted by coffee. It's symbolic representation of a profound awareness of risk. So I'm very optimistic about where we stand, but fundamentally this time calls for us to recognize that we have to stay grounded in our social license to keep that authorizing environment compelling for people.
Peter?
According to what you mentioned already, Reuven, let's add one minor point there. We stopped silo thinking in our company a couple of years ago, and thanks to our new partners we are working with, infrastructure companies as well, we put all the stakeholders on a table, then we discuss it. At least we have the same overview, maybe not the same view, but at least the same overview about it. And I think what lies ahead of us cannot done by a company, by a single person, or by a single entity. We have to do it together. And what Reuven mentioned right now is there are a lot of changes. We have started it already, but now we keep going. We should keep going with these things, and therefore we have a responsibility. So this responsibility, we should take care of that because we want to hand over something really good to the next generation.
Jacques?
Conscious of time, so I'll be telegraphic, but it's a conundrum how digitization seems so ethereal and it has such heavy infrastructure consequences, and those are there. And we should really think about using infrastructure, requiring infrastructure much more soberly than we do at the moment, it seems to me. And secondly is infrastructure and resilience, especially infrastructure and defense, but also resilience, is that we may be entering a world in which infrastructure may not be as available, as scalable as we think we are. And if we look to Ukraine,
right.
You know, they are confronted with that on a daily basis, and that may be possibly our future. So,
Antoine, Picon.
Perhaps two things briefly. I spoke about nature. We need to rethink profoundly the relation between nature and technology. And I think this is actually a task for engineers. This is a task for politicians. This is a task for everyone to rethink that. The second thing I'd like to start, in kind of studies of the Global South. There is a famous approach called people as infrastructure. In slums, for example, you don't have classic infrastructure, but you have networks of people. I think, and to echo what my neighbor said, I think infrastructure is fundamentally about people. It's as much about people as it is about technology. So that's really this triangle: people, nature, technology, and we have to rethink their relation today. And that's one of our greatest challenges.
Well, that brings us to the end of this first panel. I'd like to extend a very warm thank you to all of you for this enlightening discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now it's time for the student competition, and for that I'd like to welcome Sadie Morgan, Founding Director of DRMM.
Thank you so much. I think I've got the absolute best job of the day. In fact, I think I've had the best job of this whole conference. It's really interesting, actually, listening to what was an incredible debate and the sum up of that debate, which was what's really important. Well, quality of life is incredibly important. Non-siloed thinking, collaboration is incredibly important. Use infrastructure soberly because it might not be available. And then think about nature and how it's changing relationship with technology. But most of all, let's think about the people. And when we think about all of those things that have been discussed this morning, but we also look to the cities of the future, who do we look to design those cities of the future? Well, we look to the next generation who've had a lot of conversation, talked about them. We've talked a lot about what we're leaving behind for them. But most of all, I think, if anything, this competition and working alongside a great set of judges, we have been privileged, I think, to see the incredible optimism, the incredible ideas, and the incredible kind of passion that the next generation have for really thinking about the issues of tomorrow. So I think we're going to be okay. I mean, I really think we're going to be okay. No thanks to us. But thanks, I think, to the next generation who I hope through the showcase of the top three of what was an incredible set of submissions, hopefully you'll be able to see some of the, as I said, optimism and great ideas that we've seen throughout. So I think I have a little set of slides, but no way to ping them. If somebody would be very... Thank you so much. Amazing. Thank you, thank you. Having said that, I'm absolutely useless at moving these along. So just a little bit about this competition. I think, first of all, what an amazing, amazing thing to do. So hats off, I think, to Infravision and those involved in putting this together. It has been an extraordinary kind of get going from a standing start. To organise an international competition, I think, open to all students globally is I mean, that's ambitious. With teams, I think one of the most important things that we were hoping is that actually we're looking to gather together this non-siloed thinking. How do we get groups of young people together across all disciplines who can really work together to help solve some of these issues and look forward to what looks like our cities of the future? But we also wanted to focus on design quality. We wanted to focus on sustainability, innovation, but most importantly, overall impact, quality of life. I think that's a word that has very happily, as somebody who set up a charity called Quality of Life Foundation, very happy to have heard a lot being talked about that. And I think, very importantly, having a prize, taking these things seriously, young people put their time, energy and effort into these competitions in a way that I think is really incredible, and giving back what is, I think, really incredible prize money, again, was, I think, really respectful of the time and energy that these young people put in. What a set of judges. Thanks. I think a number of them are in the audience today. So Dominique, Paolo, Fanny, and Dario. I think we've really enjoyed looking through all of these submissions, and I think at the end of the day, although we had an interesting discussion, really, I think, came to the same and very inimitable conclusions. A very sophisticated and long-thinking set of submissions that came in, design, organisation, the project call and the evaluation. I think this just goes to show what an incredibly thoughtful and well-organised competition this was. Gwenola has already talked about the incredible reach of this competition. We had 96 projects submitted over 42 countries, and you can see here where they all came from. So those of you who are waiting with bated breath, I would just like to say it was an extraordinary set of submissions that were made. So huge congratulations to all three who are here. Who will be represented here today. We have three shortlisted in no order here. We will let you know the winners in one moment. But first of all, I think we're going to have the opportunity to hear a 3-minute presentation by all of the shortlisted schemes. I'm wondering if and when that will come up. Hopefully, if I press my buzzer, that will work. I'm really not going to talk much about them because I think they can talk about themselves. So hopefully, I'm not sure which one's coming first, perhaps in this order. But I think the Douala master plan will be up.
Our collaboration began during our master's degree, when we were challenged to reimagine and regenerate a city of our choice. As friends with a shared curiosity for socially and environmentally driven design, we were drawn to Derry Londonderry, a city whose complex history and ongoing division offered a critical design opportunity. Choosing a city so close to home made the project particularly relevant, situated within the shared cultural memory that continues to influence its communities today.
Our journey began with a visit to Derry Londonderry. Immersing ourselves in the place sparked the desire to celebrate the city for what it is now rather than past conflicts. We carried out extensive research into the historical, physical, cultural and infrastructural issues that are preventing the city from reaching its true potential. Long associated with conflict, Derry Londonderry still carries the weight of the Troubles. And although peace has been reached, generational trauma, underinvestment and continued division have left a divided landscape across the city.
Our proposal seeks to heal this divide. It reimagines Derry Londonderry through ecologically led, neutral spaces that unite people around a shared climate objective. By transcending religious boundaries, the project supports the growth of a vibrant city where people and nature thrive together. Rooted in the etymology of the city's name, Dora, Irish for oak grove, the proposal draws from the oak ecosystem, now embraced as a symbol of peace. A network of green spines and nodes branch across the city, forming places that connect a community while managing water, energy and biodiversity. At its heart, Foyle City Park, a unifying central space manifesting as an ecological and cultural journey along the river that embodies connection. This positions Derry Londonderry as a forward-looking place of renewal and shared celebration.
What makes Dora unique is its approach to post-conflict regeneration. Rather than imposing a single vision, it empowers communities through ecological neutrality, spaces that belong to everyone. By translating the Oak's interconnected ecosystem into an urban strategy, we propose a city that grows together. This unique model of nature-led regeneration could serve as a precedent for other cities recovering from division, showing how ecology can be used as a unifying language to address both environmental and social challenges. By drawing on each city's unique story, similar innovative techniques of neutral space creation that tackle urban flooding, cultural division, and monocultural landscape could be utilised.
Through this regeneration, Derry Londonderry becomes far more than a city once defined by conflict. It steps confidently to the forefront of climate-conscious infrastructure, sustainable transport, and ecological diversity. A city once divided begins to repair itself as communities move beyond belief and background towards a shared climate objective. People gained agency over shared spaces, creating a powerful sense of collective ownership and lasting stewardship. This is more than regeneration. It's a radical change by understanding the city through its people and empowering those people to continue caring for it together.
Wonderful, thank you. And next we have Mahala Van.
Our team is delighted to present the project Mahala Van, an urban proposal for Bhopal in India, looking at revitalising infrastructure and generating new methodologies for urban frameworks. The team came together through our shared values and interests. While we are all Masters of Architecture students, we brought diverse experiences which fostered multidisciplinary thinking throughout the project. These ranged from urban policy, participatory process and parametric design through to ecology, low energy retrofit and carbon analysis.
Our project addresses the sprawling southern development of Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh. India is in a critical moment of rapid expansion, and there are global social and climatic implications of its infrastructure investments. In particular, Bhopal is set to double in population by 2060.
At this critical point, we wanted to explore emergent opportunities for innovation, with hyperlocality as the key generator, in turn disrupting Eurocentric norms of master planning. Specifically, the project looks to reimagine the Smart City programme currently being applied throughout India. We have proposed a new contextually derived community-oriented design mode, centering on co-authorship and cultural and ecological restoration, achieved through what we have termed domino urbanism.
The proposal began with a research trip to Bhopal. We combined ethnographic research, supported by local residents, professionals, and the local School of Planning and Architecture, with rigorous digital data collection, as well as in-depth policy analysis. A custom theory of change model helped us align diverse inputs into an evolving design process. From this, we defined 3 core objectives: the 5-minute living framework, densification, and revival and stewardship of productive ecosystems.
Using GIS and density calculations, our proposal co-locates economic and environmental stimuli along revitalised waterways, forming critical infrastructure. This creates an interwoven network promoting equitable access and organic, adaptable growth rooted in local culture. Overall, the intention is for our demonstrative neighbourhood to form the start of segment, sector, and city-scale phasing, timed to meet the coming growth of 3 million additional people over 50 years, as well as looking ahead beyond the turn of the next century.
Through our initiative, we wanted to stress the importance of employing culturally specific design modes and the need to challenge conventions and expectations from the inception of development proposals. We also placed vital emphasis on unlearning as an integrated component of the design methodology. We found Northern India to be an incredibly rich source of inspiration. We named our project Mahalavan, meaning community forest, in homage to the complex ecosystems of the rainforests around Bhopal. We similarly aspired to create integrated networks that were diverse, resource-effective, adaptive and responsive at all layers, from subterranean services to canopy habitats.
Within this, we sought to embed and empower the communities of Bhopal, providing opportunities for them to become not just participants, but active catalysts for change. Ultimately, we hope that the methodology of thought used in both our design process and proposal can help stimulate new regenerative thinking for urban design and infrastructure proposals across the globe.
And then finally, the germinating city.
Equipo que quiere mejorar nuestra ciudad. Por eso nació la Ciudad que Germina, un proyecto que busca transformar Oruro a través de los colegios y las escuelas. Queremos que cada estudiante se convierta en responsable de cuidar y plantar árboles y de generar espacios verdes para la comunidad. Oruro es una ciudad en Bolivia ubicada a 3.600 metros sobre el nivel del mar con un clima frío y seco. Esto hace que sea muy difícil tener áreas verdes. Hoy en día, cada habitante cuenta con apenas 0.17 metros cuadrados por persona, siendo que es recomendado por la OMS 9 metros cuadrados por persona y 15 metros cuadrados sugeridos por la ONU. El proyecto surge a partir de una observación sencilla pero poderosa. La gente quiere verde, incluso en condiciones difíciles. Lo vemos en actividades locales donde niños y jóvenes pintaban áreas verdes en sus patios, demostrando que el deseo de verde está presente en todas las edades. La barrera real no es la falta de ganas ni de recursos, sino de la organización. Por eso, nuestro proyecto aprovecha los colegios y las escuelas que ya tienen una estructura y dispersión por toda la ciudad y estudiantes que pueden cuidar y plantar los árboles de manera sostenible.
El proyecto se desarrolla de aquí a 30 años. Los primeros 5 años, los estudiantes de secundaria plantarán y cuidarán los primeros arbolitos, así asegurando la supervivencia de cada uno de ellos. De 5 a 10 años, los estudiantes de primaria entran al acto. ellos empezarán a germinar sus propios árboles en invernaderos que nosotros implementaremos en la ciudad. Cabe aclarar que cumpliendo los 10 años nosotros ya cumplimos el requerimiento de la OMS de los 9 metros cuadrados de área verde por persona. De 10 a 20 años se consolidan los primeros corredores verdes y se introduce la gestión de recursos. Los estudiantes elaborarán instalaciones artesanales para reutilizar las aguas grises y realizar compostaje de la basura orgánica de sus colegios. De 20 a 30 años se consolidan los cambios físicos y políticos para los colegios, además del uso de energía limpia en las mismas. Se establecen los primeros colegios modelos que son ejemplos de infraestructura sostenible y educación ambiental.
Lo especial de este proyecto es que llega a combinar lo ecológico, lo humano y también el espacio que habitamos. Lo importante de esto es la organización y la participación de las generaciones jóvenes. Cada árbol que muere puede ser reemplazado, pero lo que es permanente es la educación y la cultura verde que se llega a transmitir de generación en generación. La ciudad que germina también ayuda a reparar fracturas urbanas. Oruro está muy centralizado, pero cada colegio sería un nuevo centro, un nuevo nodo verde que generaría corredores ecológicos y también esto generaría oportunidades distribuidas por toda la ciudad.
La participación ciudadana está garantizada desde el presente, gracias a la organización de las escuelas y colegios y a la involucración de padres y vecinos. En el futuro los niños que hoy participan serán adultos responsables, profesionales y padres de familia, llevando consigo la cultura verde a toda la ciudad, haciendo al plan replicable en diferentes ciudades. El mensaje final es claro: plantar árboles es la excusa. El verdadero cambio es en la mentalidad. Con la ciudad que germina demostramos que es posible transformar una ciudad incluso en condiciones difíciles y que las generaciones jóvenes son las verdaderas protagonistas de este cambio.
I just love seeing those videos over and over again. I can't imagine. It just makes me feel so incredibly positive. So I'm hoping that we are going to have the team from Germinating City online. I was going to say, luckily, my Spanish is as bad as my French. So Gwenola, who is suitably incredible, is going to come and help translate. Could I ask all of the participants to come up on stage and before we make the announcement, just so that everybody can give you a round of applause. And I think if you all of you, all the students come up. Oh, it's so tense. Once we've made the announcements, we would like each team we're going to give you a minute each, regardless of first, second or third, to just give a little speech. So I will hand over. I think we need a drum roll. So in reverse order, as is the way, in third place, with huge support and I think an incredible look to the future, and one that really does offer the next generation an opportunity to get involved, is the Germinating City. Congratulations.
The Germination City ha ganado el tercero precio. Congratulación para todos. Su proyecto nos ha conmovido muchísimo y tenemos mucha emoción en decidir que habéis hecho un proyecto increíble con una dimensión humana increíble y de verdad, Perdona, que no tenía el micro, ahora sí que lo tengo. Entonces, le quería decir que nos habéis conmovido muchísimo y por eso es una oportunidad decirles que tenéis un proyecto que tiene mucho más que el proyecto humano, un proyecto que nos proyecta hacia el futuro y que para mí me da mucha emoción tener oportunidad de ver a unos jóvenes como vosotros tener estos proyectos con tanta ambición, pero también con un proyecto humano detrás. Y esto sí que es lo que cuenta. Entonces, coraje y enhorabuena.
I'm not sure if you're able to just say a little something which maybe Gwenola can translate. Is that possible?
¿Podéis deciros algunas palabras, deciros algo? Que no, yo haré la traducción.
Buenos. Hola, muy buenos días. Espero que se me escuche mejor. Quisiera agradecer especialmente a todo el mundo que esté ahí, a todos los organizadores, los patrocinadores y todos los que pudieron hacer real este concurso. La verdad, nosotros desde aquí de Bolivia, muy felices, muy agradecidos, especialmente porque tal vez estas ideas pequeñas pero poderosas en verdad puedan cambiar lo que serían muchas realidades, muchos países en general. Y nosotros felices y agradecidos con todos ustedes, con toda la organización y poder haber estado en este podio tan importante representando a Bolivia con diferentes países y muy buenos proyectos, ¿no?
Muchísimas gracias. They are thanking all the organizers and they are very proud to be part of this contest and happy that we actually recognize what they have been accomplishing.
Love to have your prize, but I'm sure the money will be winging its way to you. But a beautiful plaque for you, and a huge congratulations. I think all of the jury members really, we felt that the kind of action that you were taking was really outstanding, and the fact that you are looking, as I said, to the future by, as you said, trees may die, but the culture and the knowledge that you leave behind won't. And I think that that's an extraordinary kind of look to the future and really wonderful. So congratulations again. Thank you.
Os está diciendo que estáis fenomenal, en resumen, vamos.
So well done. And now to the second prize. And I think this goes to a project that saw that infrastructure and long-term thinking can also bring citizens together who've dealt with incredibly difficult times. And the infrastructure, again, is about people. It's not just about the physical and the way that we design and look to cities, but the way in which cities can draw combative elements together. So with huge congratulations to the Douar project for second place. Please come to the stand to accept your prize. Don't know if you want to.
So thank you. On behalf of myself and my team, we just wanted to express our heartfelt thanks to Vauban, the Infravision think tank, and the entire jury for this incredible recognition. It's an honour to be part of this competition that aims to imagine what cities could become and not just what they are. So our project in Derry, Londonderry began as a simple idea that infrastructure has the power to overcome divided landscapes and unite people towards a shared climate objective. So to the organisers and everyone behind this event, thank you for selecting us to be involved in the first student competition and creating a space really for students to dream boldly. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So no surprises then. to the winners. I think seeing those three projects really showed the sort of level of sophistication and connection that came out of what I think and I hope is a long life collaboration with your peers. It was incredibly difficult to choose a winner, not just the three that we have brought to give prizes to. So I think that the exceptional projects that you've seen to date just shows, I think, how well the Mahalavan did in beating off the competition. A very, very thoughtful, sophisticated project, which really did embed, I think, a long-term thinking around how climate and the sort of digital infrastructure that's been talked about today so much really can come to the fore. So huge congratulations, and over to you. Well done.
Thank you so much to everyone who's organised this event, and thank you so much for giving your time to listen and read through our submissions. I think thank you also actually to everyone in Bhopal who's given their time for us to research, understand, and create Mahalavan as a project. Thank you, everyone. I think what's amazing about this competition is the gift is being able to talk to people about our work and giving us a voice. And I'm really excited about the fact that there are so many different groups with so many different ideas, and I think it's really inspirational. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think I will conclude, I hope, what's going to be the best part of this conference so far. And I suspect one that will leave all of us, as I said, hopeful and optimistic for the future. Thanks again to the team who've organised this, Vauban and Infravision, for setting this up. I think it's an extraordinary competition, and I really, really hope that we see it again next year. Because I think if we can get this embedded in a long-term and sustainable competition, then all of these young people who've benefited not just from working together, from thinking together, but also from great load of money that I hope you're going to go and spend doing something wonderful this evening. Congratulations to you all, and thank you very much.
Or I can, there you go. Thank you very much, Sadie. Thank you to all of the laureates. It's always a very emotional moment to see young people think and build the future. Thank you also to the team who was live with us from Bolivia. Now, please join me in welcoming Ladeja Godina Košir. She's an internationally renowned expert on the circular economy. She's also the founder and executive director of the think tank Circular Change. Please welcome her.
Something is happening. Hello, everyone. Oh, it's exciting being here. After this best part, I can say that I'm really privileged that I can share the stage with you. Hopefully, I will survive in these shoes. What is really nice, and I must say that very often young people are used as decoration. So they come in when we need to show that we see them in a way, but to see them engaged as we saw them today. So it's really something, and one big applause for organizers as well as for those future change makers. Please, it is really, I'm so touched. Okay, I've heard so many interesting things today, so hopefully throughout this journey we will discover or at least highlight few moments and few points that were discussed and are essential for not only the future of the cities, but for the future of us humans who are part of nature. I'm starting this with an animal. We've heard that nature is important, but we often forget that we are part of the nature. And this shrimp has a special gift. He can see more spectrums of the colors than we humans can. Why is this important? I will come back to that. Because also with infrastructure, it is very similar. Very often we talk about what is visible, about buildings, about railways, about airports, but there is much more than that, because infrastructure reflects our values, our way of life. It reflects how we want to collaborate, co-create, and that is what is essential for the future of our civilization. So, in a nutshell, we are seeing also the circularity and circular economy as a mindset shift. And we have heard about decoupling, and it is really important. We have heard about externalities. All these elements are embedded in circular economy. And often we do not see all that because we focus so much on something what is visible. And also when we are talking about infrastructure, and as we have seen, we ignore things, or we are not aware of those things that are actually essential for that, how we are envisioning infrastructure for the future. This is about quality of life. It is about values that we would like to share and spread with our kids, with our grandkids, and it is about the future we want to live it. And it is really nice when I did my homework and I went through the materials that were already published. So from reports to podcasts to the videos from the conference, how much knowledge, expertise, and good practices are actually within Infravision. And it's really great to see that this think tank is building something very important. So in this short journey today, we will go through that, what is actually circular economy, and I will not go into the details but reflect throughout cases. I will briefly introduce the organization I founded, Circular Change, and also the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform that I'm co-chairing for 8 years. And then I will show just 2 cases briefly. I will touch base to cities that inspired me recently, and at the end we will stop at the role of transition brokers as the missing link. So, recently there was one important event in Berlin, and it was by ICLE, that touched base the same topics that we are discussing today. It was very much about how cities shape the infrastructure. It was very much about the role of the people, our needs, about the society, and of course the topic that is also very important, where the money comes from and how it is invested, not wasted. It was very nice at the panel where we have heard how important it is that we connect the dots. Also when the money is on the table, is it really invested in something what has positive impact, or is it just placed somewhere without tangible results? And recently I'm coming from Slovenia, the country of just the right size, and your President Macron visited our country just a week ago. And where he stopped, it is very symbolic. He visited the Cultural Creative Center ROC. And why is it so symbolic? Because this center was refurbished. It used to be a factory where they were producing bikes, but nowadays, under this same roof that was reconstructed, refurbished, and repurposed, all generations are co-creating very sustainable solutions. And it is one small example of that, what can happen when you use infrastructure, the building and everything what belongs to this whole environment, for something what can be an impulse for the creativity in each of us. And it is very intergenerational because you can find students there, young kids, or retired people visiting the library. So this is how we see that culture is in epicenter of our lives, of our infrastructure, and of our future. So I just briefly want to mention two things. We were in Osaka in September, and it was European Week back then. And with the commissioner, Jessica Roswell, we discussed circular diplomacy. Another topic that is very much related to what is happening in this room, because we see that we all need to be humble. Not to say, I'm from Europe, I have the answers, or I'm from the United States, as you said, and I have the answers. No, it's more than that. It is about exchange. It is about learning from each other. It is to learn from mistakes as well. And nowadays, we need to be fast because everything is changing. We have this climate change, we have geographical changes, we have all the challenges you can name. So this circular diplomacy, in a way that we do not represent only our national interests, but actually the interest of the civilization, is the topic that I'm very much supporting on the global level. And the second thing I wanted to mention as well, just to jump back, is the okay, we will move forward, is that with our circular change, we are also having a kind of celebration next year, 10 years, and we are very much focusing on circular economy. And someone who was here on this stage, former Commissioner Janez Potočnik, is also the chair of our honorary board. And that gives us also the insights and the, I would say, the knowledge and expertise that bridges us across, I would say, nations, but also across the continents. And I would like also to invite everyone to check what this circular economy stakeholder platform in Brussels actually is, because also this event is now promoted on that very platform. We really want to be in a network of networks, and we want to bridge everyone, not only those who are placed in Europe, but even beyond. And now it's very important that we do bridge global north and global south, and it has been represented before also with the students. So I will just briefly touch two examples, just to give us an idea of where do we see the changes also within the infrastructure and the mindset. This is another case. I don't know whether you're familiar with the company Aquafil. Anyone heard about Econyl, 100% nylon, something like that? Not yet, okay. Giulio Bonazzi, the Italian guy, is the one who is really brave and very innovative. And they have facilities in Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia. And what they have extra heating energy. It was waste. Until they discovered that just a few hundred meters away, there is another facility that needs this energy. This is Atlantis, this is the water park, huge one, and they were paying before for this energy. But now they built infrastructure, really a pipe from one building to another one, and this heat is now transformed from point A to point B. And you can see how much emissions they save, but it is not only about emissions. It is also about that how something what used to be waste is now used as very valuable resource. And this is the mindset we need, and we need to step out of our silos, as we said, and from our companies and look around where the opportunities are. When I was looking at the videos of the previous sessions, I noticed that already Pipistrel was discussed on this very plenary session. And this is another innovative company rooted in Slovenia. They are producing electric airplanes. Why I choose this one? Because again, infrastructure needs to change once we have this kind of things flying around, whether they're meant for us as private people to commute around or for cargo. So it is another shift that is happening because airplanes and airports that we were used to are now changing into something else. And similar as with the previous case, when we need different infrastructure, also here things are changing very much. And now I will jump back to Japan. I mentioned that I was there at the expo, but what inspired me even more was when I visited Naoshima. Anyone here familiar with Naoshima Island? Wow, there is someone. Thank you very much for that. Because I also bought a book with art as my weapon that is describing this Naoshima concept that is related absolutely to the infrastructure, to the culture, to architecture, to that how to transform the area, these are small islands in Japan, that were destroyed because of the industry, into something what is now living purposeful life. So there is purpose for people who live there, there is art that you experience in a very different way, and there is also agriculture, because how to connect rural areas or rural spots with urban mindset and urban infrastructure is another big challenge. So the next case of infrastructure is the cultural center of cultural epicenter of Europe. This is Gorizia and Nova Gorica, two cities on the border, Italy, Slovenia, and a nice example. Railway station has been renovated and is connecting not only to countries, but to cultures. So throughout these examples, what I would like to highlight, what was mentioned before already, infrastructure is really, really much more than just something visible. And with Naoshima case, we can see how we understand nature, collaborate with nature, and then also bring life to those who are already desperate in a way. And people are coming back, tourists are coming back, and there is a high quality of life nowadays. And with Gorizia case, we also see how with maybe small and symbolic gesture of just refurbishing and repurposing the railway station, we can bring cultures and nations together. And I will conclude with one role that is a missing link. I have listened carefully to what has been said, and I can say that with Jacqueline Kramer, the former Minister of Environment from the Netherlands, we are working closely on the concept of network governance and transition brokers. So transition brokers as those coordinators or collaborators that are in the epicenter of the systemic change. So we have to step out of the silos. We have to understand different interests. It's completely legit to have different interests. But if we have common goal, how to get there? So transition brokers are those who are coordinating these actions. And in the report that was published, what we saw, so this is Vauban, a report from 23 focused on circular economy. Of course, that one of the categories that has a very strong negative impact is cement. And a case study from the Netherlands is showing how, with the role of transition brokers that can connect different actors, different interests, we can move towards more sustainable usage of concrete. This is just one example, but I wanted to highlight how much needed this role actually is, because what transition brokers do, they bridge people, policies, and purpose to co-create shared vision. They're translating complexity, because everything is super complex and sometimes really complicated, into clear actions and collaborative solutions. They're empowering networks. We have heard a lot about the role of networks, and skills that sustain long-term transformation. If you remember, Sinkevičius at the beginning said that we have problem with mandates because they last maximum 4 years, but these solutions need to last much longer. And we are accelerating systemic change. So by turning something what might look a moonshot into something what is very measurable and has impact. So transition needs this kind of connectors, and we are very much in favor of recognizing that, because at the end of the day, also all of us, someone is a mayor who will go home and focus on his task. Someone is in a business, needs to focus on KPIs. Someone is a student and needs to do an exam. So, but everyone has this will to collaborate. And with this transition broker in the epicenter, this change can happen. So to close with the idea of let's build cities worth of belonging, and the key takeaways, I'm jumping, are not this, but yeah. So let's move from efficiency to sufficiency. This is also one mindset, to do more with less. Understand cities as ecosystems, as a part of the nature. It was stressed very often today. We need a new social contract as well. It was also mentioned how to connect the rural and urban areas. Yes, one is connectivity, the digital infrastructure, but the rest is the human connectivity. Without that, it cannot happen. And true wealth. What is true wealth? We are privileged, all of us here in this room, but at the end of the day, what counts? It's shared joy. It is the energy. It is when you can hug someone, when you can see your kids, when you can talk to your grandparents. So meaningful communities. And this is what Singapore is doing really well, what was mentioned before. And at the end, of course, transition brokers. I'm really, really here to encourage you to look at that and to position those people who are transition brokers in the epicenter of your transition and your project. So let's build cities that make people appreciate where they live. And to conclude with one more quote that disappeared, but it was, I don't know why it's not here, but anyhow, it was that we should not preach, because no one is interested in what we are saying, but we should collaborate and work on that, what really makes us feel that we are purposeful and fulfilled. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much indeed, Ladeja, Godina, Košir, for that very insightful presentation. Now, our first discussion focused on the urgent need to address what we call the tragedy of the horizon in city infrastructure, which carries profound consequences for the future. And I think the challenge is pretty clear now. But it represents also an unparalleled opportunity to rethink how infrastructure is conceived, financed, and even delivered. And it's something that was outlined by Mr. Sinkevičius in his opening statements as well. The current points of failure of urban infrastructure hold the potential of becoming, in the near future, the foundations of a more sustainable future. And to unlock that value, we need a deliberate effort of projection that is needed. And that's exactly what Infravision and its experts have done. And they've actually outlined two critical factors that will define the future of our cities. One is resource management strategy, ranging from proactive abundance and efficiency to reactive scarcity and strain. And the other is governance models, spanning from technology-driven, centralized, hierarchical structures to decentralized, community-led arrangements. Now, together, these two dimensions form a framework that will help us tell whether cities will evolve into inclusive, resilient, smart, and sustainable system, or whether they'll increase fragmentation, inequity, and systemic vulnerability. But no matter what, the future of urban infrastructure will be complex and hybrid. And that's what the report says, that cities of tomorrow will likely blend elements that from multiple scenarios. And whether, rather than just choosing a simple pathway, the concept of adaptive city will embody in a very pragmatic manner strengths of each model while mitigating, of course, all of their respective vulnerabilities. Now, in this conversation coming up, we are going to deep dive into the practical ways to build urban infrastructures that's truly fit for the future and in line with people's moving expectations. I'd like for that to welcome our guest on stage, Dominique Alba, CEO of Atelier Jean Nouvel, Sébastien Fraisse, CEO of Indigo, Xavier Hurstel, Deputy CEO of ADP International, Paolo Moura, Deputy Director of IMREDD, and John Phillips, CEO of Global Infrastructure Investors Association. Thank you for joining us. Please do take a seat. And I think we can give them a warm round of applause. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's truly a pleasure to be hosting this second panel. It's entitled Ways Forward, Critical Levers to Evolve Towards Integrated Resilience and Adaptive Infrastructure in Cities. Now, the push towards adaptive cities is really, I forgot something before that. Before that, I'd like us to do what we did in the first panel and really take a macro vision, zoom out, and I'd like to know across each of your specific industries, mobilities, architecture, innovation, investment, what are the major shifts that you're seeing that will shape the way we build and manage infrastructure in cities in perhaps let's say the decade to come? And what does the idea of making cities adaptive, how does it inspire you? Maybe I'm going to turn first to Xavier and Sebastian from the point of view of mobility providers, car park and airport infrastructure. What's your point of view? Either or.
Yeah, start. Thank you. Hello all. Yes, it's true that our industry, car park industry, parking industry is very impacted by the moves in the city, the ongoing moves. I'm thinking about, of course, decarbonization of transportation, which obliges us to deploy a lot of EV charging stations in our car parks. But I'm also thinking about the big trends we see in every city, not only the biggest ones. I mean, the cities want to reduce the place of cars and more broadly the place of mobility vehicles on the surface. So it means that we build now car parks very different from what we built 10, 15, 20 years ago with, of course, EV charging stations, with bike parks, with also sometimes accommodations for trucks, for buses, for coaches. And so we are finally moving from car park to mobility hubs and even urban services hub, as we are also deploying, implemented new kind of services, urban services in our car parks, such as self-storage, such as last mile logistic platforms. So it's very new for us. I would say it's only 3-4 years projects, and we are implementing in Paris this kind of project. So at the end, it means that we have a big challenge to address, not only for new car parks. Finally, it's quite easy to design these car parks how we need today, but the real challenge is the existing car parks. We have to to make them address these new topics, these new needs, and it's of course very, very difficult on the operational side, of course, legal side, also technical science, physical science. Yes, so it's a big challenge for us today.
Xavier, from the point of view of ADP.
Well, thanks. We manage CDG on Orly Airport in Paris, but we manage as well 25 airports worldwide, and we have the same challenges in France and outside of France, which is facing what has been said in the panel before, crossed challenges, and we have to work right now in a collaboration way with all that works and lives in an airport. That's why not only we have to improve the infrastructure for a growing traffic, because air traffic will continue to grow in Europe, worldwide, whatever, and we have to face this traditional challenge. But we have to face right now new challenges, decarbonization as well, but a better collaboration, especially with cities. And for us, the connection between the city and the airport remains one of the most important challenges. I would say that if I have to summarize all the future of Charles de Gaulle Airport that has been discussed, the new plan for Charles de Gaulle Airport for 2035 and 2050, it has been discussed in a consultation during 6 months. The future of Charles de Gaulle Airport, it's train, which is quite amazing for an airport, but it's train. And if the most important investment we may have, we'll have to have a new internal subway, a new classical subway, a new regional subway, a new express subway, a new regional train, and a new high-speed train station, all that in an airport we saw that our strategy are now totally crossed with traditional infrastructure city strategies.
We'll go back to that with the CDG Express and all of the different projects that you have ongoing now. But Sebastian, I'd just like to go back on one term that you coined that I saw in an article that says, you talked about urban reconquest. What do you mean by that exactly? Had we lost cities?
Yes, urban reconquest is what I mentioned, is that finally cities, all the cities, the small ones, medium ones, and of course big ones, are trying to transform the surface. They don't want to have, for example,
try again. Yep, here. Yep.
Yes, they don't want to have car park on the surface, and because they want to implement finally more user-friendly functions and services, such as garden square, such as bike lanes, such as, of course, restaurant terraces and cafes. So that's why they try to manage differently than they used to before the car parks, and the way this access to the center of city can be differently managed.
Now I'd like to turn to Dominique and have the point of view of an architect and an urban planner. How do you see these adaptive cities, and what are the shifts that you're seeing?
Thank you. I just want to precise that before being CEO of Jean Nouvel, I was in charge of town planning at the scale of Paris and Great Paris, and I'm sorry for your problems with car park, because we really fight a lot to put the car out of the public space. So I worked with Bertrand Delanoë and Anne Hidalgo for 20 years. So really. And something very funny, I remember where we were in a competition to have some sort of sport competition in Paris. In the booklet we prepared, I discovered that they spoke only about plane accessibility. And I told them, please, Paris, train accessibility. It's the best accessibility of Europe for trains. So this just to explain how things are changing. And I think one word hasn't been pronounced this morning is sobriety. Mm-hmm. We can change, but we need less. And this is a big problem for all of you, because as you said, and many of you told it in the panel, that's a problem of budget, a problem of profit. So when we need less, how do you do? And this is a very, very good way to look at things. And I think in urban planning, we were used to learn about that, and I will give examples later. And now infrastructure are discovering that they have to use the strategy of urban planning. I mean that when I took the direction of urban planning strategy for Paris and Great Paris, the name is APUR. In 2008, I started as a delegate director, and I prepared all the datas and explaining that all the infrastructure were our main target. Building is not a target. Building is existing. We refurbish buildings. We can have new buildings. Everybody knows about building. But nobody knows about infrastructure. It's hidden. It's separate. It's not coordinate. It's something completely aware. So I proposed to all the partners getting about infrastructure, working with infrastructure, to get in urban planning with us. And now with what allows the data knowledge, you have to understand during the COVID, we were able to know exactly what was empty in Paris. You know with what data? Water consumption, not electricity, water. Potable water. If you have no consumption of potable water, you have nobody in the building. And so with all that sort of data, you can really redefine all the process of all the infrastructure.
Right. Thank you very much.
I will go later.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to John now. As I said earlier, you're the CEO of Global Infrastructure Investors Association. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the association and how you're actually looking also at this adaptive cities concept and the shifts that you're seeing?
Yes, hi. I'm at the boring end of this conversation, right? Because typically
the investment.
Well, not only the investment, but I mean, infrastructure as an asset class is characterized by long-term, stable, predictable infrastructure. So my members own the car parks. They own the airports. You can't move an airport, not very easily. You can't move a car park very easily. So you can have, to some extent, a view to the future about how you might optimize the use of that asset. but by and large, it's a fixed asset. So the whole definition of infrastructure, certainly from an investor point of view, is something that is physical, largely immovable. So when you place that alongside this fascinating conversation about adaptability, there's kind of a fundamental, sort of issue to sort of, work through. Because when you're trying to make long-term investment decisions about infrastructure, and there are so many moving parts around, what is a city's housing policy going to be? What is a how are you going to plan for the provision of power and water and things like that? There are always winners and losers.
And there are so many factors as well, too.
Exactly, right. So adapting an adaptive cities is a great concept, and it's very exciting.
On paper.
On paper. But it does bring...
Dominique says it's easy.
It brings, well, as a town planner, she would, right? But what it does do, actually, is bring a really even greater importance on the whole process of town planning and master planning.
Right.
Because if you can set out a vision for a city, a community, and that has a degree of a solidity about it, a permanency about it, at least for a period of time, then infrastructure investors can respond to that.
Right.
What's very difficult to respond to is constantly changing requirements that then have to retrospectively then be solved through infrastructure, which is a very expensive way of doing it. So the better we can be at master planning, the better the infrastructure investors can respond to those kind of changing needs.
Thank you, John. Paolo Moura, I said it earlier, you're the Deputy Director of IMREDD, am I pronouncing this right? IMRED.
The academic acronyms, yes.
So how are you looking at this from an innovation expert's perspective?
Yeah, I think from the innovation perspective, we have a paradigm shift here. We said we cannot move an airport as fast as we can, but when you get a huge flood in the south of Brazil, the airport finds themselves underwater, and they have to build up a new airport in 2 weeks. So they did it. They used the commercial center. They used the right, not the best one, but we land and we fly with airplanes over there. So we need to adapt ourselves.
Right.
Okay. Adaptive cities is not the city of the future, because if you don't adapt ourselves, have no future over there. We are experiencing some increase of how can I say the impact that we are suffering today. We never saw a lot of things that we are seeing. COVID is one example of time. I remember that I presented a project to try to shift people from 2 to 3% of remote work, and people said, no, it's too ambitious. And 3 months after, COVID arrived, and they put everybody in remote work. Then, so now we discussed about 35 or 45%. So we are experiencing new things. That put an adaptive city is a strategy. Not just the city, because we don't control anymore. We coordinate things, and we coordinate in a scenario that you don't know anymore. We talk about here the first time that I heard someone tell about network of networks. Okay, I wrote about that a little time ago. But that's interesting, because we are not having one infrastructure anymore. So we have a network and combine themselves. Okay, if everybody take a train today here in Paris, a metro, first things that we do is take our cell phone to see what's the best way to arrive from A to B. So we are merging infrastructure, not just connectivity. It's not just about mapping and not mobility as a service. It's about the train. No, how can I put that to myself? And then the population are training to do that. So we have an army of people using technology, using infrastructure every single day, and they can be a really good asset. So how can you coordinate that? That's the point for the adaptive city. So we need to access, learn, and adapt ourselves fast. and how to do that in a complex network. If you work with a no financial report, we understand what I'm saying here. How can we put that together? How can we use artificial intelligence or not? How can we put that together to access the infrastructure, understand the problem, and to try to solve the problem not by ourselves, but in a community point of view? We saw 3 projects today that what they have in common, community approach. So community is not just about people or something like it's how can we build things together? And then I bring together the open innovation concept.
Right.
So we need to make it works, really works. It's not everybody here can solve the problem, but not each one of us can solve the problem.
Now, you were talking about working together. It's only going to be possible to go towards these adaptive cities if we can work as ecosystems, if we're able to get rid of those silos, and that's one of the messages that we've also heard this morning. Can you explain, perhaps, Paolo, what you mean when you say integration or coupling in the context of infrastructure?
Yeah, I think integration when you align things. Okay, when we put that together, we connect things in a digital way. We work together. Okay, coupling is when you share something together. Okay, so we put, and when you work together, we make those things a purpose. We have a main goal, a common goal. That's the important thing, because when you have to work together. It's not about the silos. I have to excuse myself here because for several years I explained 3 silos. I said academia, private sector, and public sector. Actually, I was wrong. It's not 3 silos. It's one ecosystem. We have a problem. We have all this capacity. How can we put that together? That's the point of view. It's not because I'm a public institution or I'm a private institution or I'm academia. How can we solve this problem? Because problems, we have a lot today, it's not just one of them. But you need to adapt ourselves from the whole shift that we are facing. Right. And not just economically, but politically and everything. So we need to put that together.
Now, Sebastian, how can urban mobility networks become more interconnected, more capable of adapting to citizens' changing patterns? And we know that patterns are changing quickly. At the core of urban transformation is Indigo's role evolving towards becoming a sort of connector, I say, within the city ecosystem.
Yes, our...
Don't put your hand here. Your hand a little bit. Yep. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, our role is evolving as the functions of our assets are evolving. Traditionally, for example, of course, car parks is the place where the medium and long distance journeys are connected with local and short journeys, so kind of multimodal hub services as we traditionally operate, but it's true for people, it's true for goods now, thanks to these new last mile logistic platforms, because we know that to implement this kind of equipment, we need a lot of square meters, we need a lot of surfaces. It's not so easy to find in the core of the city, and especially in the city of Paris. And as we are talking about connection, and as Paolo said, the problem today we have to face is to connect governance, to connect legal frames, to connect regulations. I mean, we are traditionally discussing with teams in charge of mobility in the cities. If our assets are gradually accommodating new services such as logistics or self-storage, it's true that we have to discuss also with city planners. We have concessions models in terms of contracts. We have to discuss now with, as I said, more real estate models in terms of contracts. And in terms of regulations, I can confirm that it's not so easy to make a car park become something else. Yeah. It's a huge challenge for us, but finally we managed to do that once. Perhaps it will be the beginning of a new story, but it's true that we are quite aware today that we have to connect many things together, and especially on the city side in terms of planning and the community we have to create to discuss on these topics.
Connect many things that are also all evolving in a very rapid manner.
Yes.
Xavier, of course, integration is huge, a critical challenge for airports. I'm thinking, of course, of efficient connections with other transport modes. We talk a lot about air and rail transport, which is essential. Could you share perhaps the vision of ADP and its role within the urban ecosystem? I know there's a lot of multimodal and decarbonized hub projects.
That's true that we do not have only to be a hub for our main client, which is Air France, and we launch a new initiative to improve the hub in Paris, which is a proof of sovereignty.
Right? It's a
Absolutely.
partnership, yeah.
So it's not only a hub for our line; it's a hub for a genuine collaboration with cities, not only for connection. But we need these trail connections. For example, you have 90,000 people working in the Charles de Gaulle area. 67% of them came with a car for walking,
right.
Which is a challenge. Well, we have to diminish that very frankly in the years to come. So we have to work with cities around and with local authorities around. But we are a hub as well, for example, for energy. Mm-hmm. What is the future of energy? For example, the strategy for hydrogen. We are thinking about hydrogen since now a long time. We think that the challenge for hydrogen is transport. Mm-hmm. So it's useful to produce hydrogen, which is quite easy, in the airport. If we produce hydrogen in the airport, we have a model, because we think that decarbonization and market can go together. We have a model for the cities around to benefit from the hydrogen production inside the airport. We can be a hub of energy. We can be as well a hub for employment with all the number of people working around the zone. But I think to be a good hub, to collaborate in a good way, we have to keep our DNA. Airports won't be the cities of the future. Right. You won't live in an airport. You work in an airport, you connect in an airport, but you won't live in an airport. So you have to respect what you are and what the other local authority needs to have good collaborations. You have to focus on which is useful. That's why energy, connectivity, transport, jobs, which is the most useful for collaboration.
And we'll go back on that topic of collaboration with the cities in just a moment. John, let's talk a little bit more about this greater integration, working as an ecosystem. What are perhaps the best practices that you've seen, and what can we do to make this collaboration more effective? What have you seen?
So again, traditionally, the infrastructure play has been, you are an energy investor, you are a transport investor, you are you are a utilities investor, whatever it might be. And increasingly now, investors are seeing the interconnectedness of those individual assets, and that. So, and we've touched on a number of examples already this morning, but the most sort of the most exciting one, I guess, that is the most prevalent at the moment is where data centers are emerging. They're very energy hungry. Yep. They're also water hungry. So it's a very brave investor that is building a data center that hasn't also considered where they're going to get their baseload energy supply as well. The resilient supply of energy for data centers is essential. But we also live in a world where water is becoming ever more scarce. So they're having to use, through a combination of, technology really, to see how they can overcome that kind of water thing through closed circuit kind of cooling systems and things like that to try and reduce the pressure. So you see that connection very clearly with data center energy and water. All sorts of other examples where infrastructure, interconnectedness. But the common denominator through all of that is technology now. So technology is bringing more and more opportunity for investors to use to I guess sweat the asset more, to get more performance out of the physical infrastructure that they have, to make the usage of the infrastructure much smarter from preemptive maintenance through to optimizing customer requirements, whether that's energy, water, transport, or whatever. So that whole kind of tech play is is where the new front, I think, is coming. That it's even in typical kind of investment spaces, it's even got its own jargon now. So we now talk about infra tech as a specific kind of subcategory of the infrastructure space.
Okay. Well, following up on John's question, Dominique, in your experience, what planning and design strategies best enable the integration of transport, energy, we said water, and digital networks within this urban fabric?
Oh, big question. I think I could just perhaps share some examples. And first, I would like just to say that we have to be aware that what happened in infrastructure is really incredible because, for example, electricity is coming from everywhere in Europe, and it disconnects and it reconnects. It's something incredible. But citizens, nobody explains them that. So perhaps Vauban, and I know all those people, could do something to explain people what's happening under their foot. This is something apart. It's just going on with the dominating cities. What we saw, the students in Bolivia, what did they do? And for me, it was the best of the project because it was really mobilizing nothing and everything at the same time. Now, another example, very simple, water. Everybody knows about water. At the end of the 19th century, everybody wanted the water to be in a pipe system. No water in the city. Everything was to be controlled. This was essential. And for example, we have in the Mount of Paris, along the Seine River, what we call the Lac d'Orient. It's a very nice place, but everything was built. It was just the reservoir to regulate the flow of the Seine. But when it rains in June, and that your reservoirs are full to ensure the flow of the Seine during the drier period, what does happen? They can't play their role. We have no other strategy possible, so the Seine overflows. This happened a few years ago. And now there's a new project going on now, much more different because it's in La Bassée, and instead of building those Lac d'Orient, they just decide to share a part of the land with the people owning this land and say, when the Seine goes up, the water can overflow more in a more natural way here. Do you agree with that? And it's what's going on now. This is in the cities when Antoine Picon spoke about the sponge city. It's the same. It's to say that instead of having all the pipe system that oblige us to have very big mechanism to just treat the water because we have too much water going into the pipe, if we keep some place in the city, in some part of the city, we can reduce the pressure and we can stop building new industry system. It's the same for the waste. Waste had to disappear. You remember, in the 60s, you put something in your apartment in a small hole, plop, it went away, and nobody
knew where it went.
But it was perfect. And now everybody asks you to keep your waste in your apartment, and everybody says, yes, but I have mice, and it's dégueulasse, and it smells bad, etc. It's changing, but now we have Tulip in the street of Paris, and it's changed the needs for big infrastructure. It's changed the net. It's changed what's going to happen. And this is what I say, it's easy. It's not easy because it's easy to do. I said if the story is okay, shared with the politics and the infrastructure, I say specialist, as you said, things can happen. That's true. You know, 20 years ago, many people said that airport could be the cities of tomorrow, of the future. I'm happy to share that with you. It's not possible. It's not what we want. But just to explain that it's industrial, cultural, spatial, and maintenance. So we have all the keys. And with the IA, with the tools, with the data, we really can improve that. I agree about the data centers. This is something new. It's something pushing everybody. So that's why in the terms, when you do urban planning, you have to keep space for that. You know, in the Great Paris, the space occupied by not the railway and the roads, the space with the railway station, with the different industries, it's 1% of the territory. So it's really easy to keep 2%, for example. It was a big fight in 2003 when we changed the rules for Paris to keep space for having this infrastructure. And this is very important. We have to keep the space, and we have after to change the method. It's not one or the other one. It's really the both. Sorry, I'm long.
John, I think you wanted to answer.
I just think there's just to build on that.
John, put your hand a little bit higher up on the microphone.
Sorry, yeah, just to build on that. I mean, I think there's plenty of examples that I can think of in the UK, and I expect also in France, where actually there are post-industrial sites where industry has closed down. It's the industry of the past. The communities around those are desperate for new investment, for new jobs. Those are the sites where data centers should be being built. You don't need to cram data centers into busy cities. You can use them as a catalyst for regeneration in places, in towns where they are desperate for a new way of inventing, their regeneration.
Right. Paolo, there's one trend in cities, and I think you can see it here in Paris. You have those little scooters. It's the shared and autonomous mobility, and most of them are supported by technologies like AI, like digital twins as well. Tell us a little bit more about how all of this technology is helping cities become more adaptive.
Yeah, I think the merge of share economy, I think is a phenomenon that we keep up with that, but the ownership changes. I think that's the main point. I think we don't get it that yet, but I think we will arrive one day to understand that sometimes we need the car, but we don't need to own the car. We can just have the service of the car, because you don't need the same car every day. Sometimes you need a big car, sometimes you need a small one, sometimes you don't need the car anymore. We just go to a dinner and then you come back by cab. Is a problem. Mm. So the sharing economy just for mobility is a different perspective of things. So when you talk about infrastructure again, but to think about the sharing apartment, we don't need to live in the same apartment but for the rest of our life. Our lives change. We get married, we get children, so we get old. So the life cycle changes. So it's not the same size of the house that we need. So can we adapt to that? We saw some projects related to that, but we need to change also the regulation connected to these things. We still have the same regulations that we had 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So how can we evolve the regulation as well to facilitate this kind of sharing thing? So that's one first thing. And then the second important for the sharing thing is the capacity of, again, from resilience point of view. Right. Sometimes you have some floods that they destroy the whole fleet of cars. So the city have no cars anymore. We saw that in Spain like one week ago. How can you manage that? So we rebuild the same thing. Everybody, the insurance pay everybody buy a new car. So all the cycles, we repeat the cycle. Right. In this situation, we can implement a shared mobility process. So we need to adapt things. We need to learn how to do that. And you need to teach people how to use that. Okay, I think that's the main point. The learning process, we forget about it. We implement things, but you need to teach people how to use it.
So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left, and I haven't gone through half of the questions that I had for you, and there's many people around the table. So maybe I'd like to give you time now to either tell us more about the digitalization, because that was part of the roundtable, but also the investment part. So maybe if some of you could give us kind of your concluding comments, and really what are the key points that you would like the audience to remember after this roundtable? Yep. Would you like to start?
Yes, my final word will be that sobriety, I think, is a good work Dominique mentioned. I think that finally why Indigo is investing in last mile logistic platform, just because finally on one side the city of Paris, in Paris you have to know that there's 200,000 parcels to deliver every day, for you, for me, for companies, for everybody. It requires more or less 200,000 square meters, and of course you cannot have this in Paris, as you prefer developing a new housing superstructure than logistic. On the other side, Indigo, for example, is operating 1 million square meters underground. It's very specific square meters, but underground. And so we think that we could meet this need and this assets. And it's the discussion we have with the city of Paris, very efficient. And we are deploying this kind of new need, and we are working with operators like data centers. We are working with cooling and heating production operators also to try to see if we can accommodate their occupants in our car park. So finally, and digitalization, for us, it's a key topic. As to be honest, at the beginning, we just wanted to save some OPEX and trying to address some risk. And finally, we're producing and collecting a lot of data, because behind digitalization, the point is the data. And thanks to this data we deliver to the cities, we are able to better understand the way people are parking, so are moving, and so to try to test some different policies. And it's quite very useful for cities. So finally, I think it's just the beginning of the story, I imagine, for us, in terms of reconverting surfaces into something else.
And we wish you all the best. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Xavier, on this question, if you could wrap up also this panel.
Well, digitalization, according to me, is useful, but remain a tool. Will all the data we have now, we have to use that for, which is the most important. It has been said in the former panel, to explain and to convince around infrastructure. You may have collaboration between infrastructure if you can explain that to people. People living around, people paying for, people benefiting from, people or companies. You have to explain them in a rational way, to explain what is exactly the infrastructure they are used, or they don't know, or they know it, and how infrastructures can collaborate between themselves. So you need really a pedagogic speech. So data could help, but first of all, it's personal, human companies' commitment for that. And really, I think that we need to improve these political explanations of what we need, very useful for the future of infrastructure. And if local authorities could help, well, let's try to avoid, to improve our regulations, because regulations, it's not too heavy now, it may be even contradictory. Right. And to lower taxes, since all the money we put in taxes, we won't put it in decarbonization.
John or Paolo?
Thank you. So I agree with the very much with the need for a better conversation about the infrastructure we want, the infrastructure we can afford as well, because the funding conversation is one that is very poorly addressed by politicians. There is only two ways of funding infrastructure: taxation or bills. Right. Everything else is a version of that. Mm-hmm. And we have to have a much more honest conversation with people about, when we talk about resilient infrastructure, how resilient do you want it to be? Do you want it to be 100% resilient 100% of the time? In which case, that's going to be expensive. So we have to have more honest conversations about the infrastructure we want and we need, and how to pay for it. And then really, really quickly, I'd just like to say there's one lesson that I think we can take from what's happening in the US at the moment, where there's a number of major cities in the US undertaking pieces of work called asset inventories. And I think it's a really interesting concept, because it forces public leaders to understand exactly what publicly owned assets they have, and what plan do they have for it. Right. Do they see those publicly owned assets as or as liabilities? I bet there are many cities in Europe that have car parks in the middle of them that see the car park as a liability. They don't have the money to invest in it. They see it as they don't see the vision that privately owned infrastructures investors can see for that kind of thing.
Listing assets.
So let's get a better understanding of the assets that are owned, and have a better plan of what you do with them. And some of those assets are better played in the private sector than they are in the public sector.
Thank you very much, Joe. Paolo?
I think the most important thing here is working in the partnership. So not just PPP, public-private, people partnership. It's important to put everybody together around the table. If you try to look infrastructure in a different perspective, perhaps you can create some new joint ventures, some new opportunities for investments. I strongly believe with that, so people need to understand how to see differently. As I said, as the university, and highlight that I work in a public French university, and we are trying to work with a venture capital. We are doing venture capital. Okay, we did one investment. It was huge, and then we are doing a second thing. So we are looking differently the way that value research, value the investment, to connect with the partners, the public sector. So if you do that with infrastructure, we can find a lot of opportunities.
And Dominique, you've heard all of the closing statements. How would you conclude this panel?
Oh, I think this panel opens many things, so it's not a conclusion, but perhaps I would say just a few words. Perhaps it's the time not to think big, as it was usual for infrastructure, but think far. And this is not exactly the same, and it's easy to share. And thinking far with agility, with all what you said about connectors, sharing, speaking with everybody, etc. What I just perhaps would add is to say one thing very critical for infrastructure is that the dimension is always about a peak. And so everything is oversized. And for sobriety, we just think perhaps differently. We can go slowly, or more slowly. We can just have more information shared. It's happened with the transport services. You spoke about the people coming to your airport with cars, and now with a nice bus network, it can help them to come, and with the new metro also, and things like that. So it's just perhaps some small things like that. Think far, share more, and change the size of calibration, change the rhythm, because this will help to reduce the pressure on the infrastructure.
Well, I'd like to thank all of our distinguished panelists for this engaging and thought-provoking discussion. I think we could give them a warm round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And I'll let you go back to your places. For me, that's it for me. And now I'm going to pass the floor back to Mrs. Gwenola Chambon.
Thank you. So thank you to all the panelists. What can I say? Yeah, it works. So it was great panel. Thank you so much. So now we are going to speak about the culture and how it can become quite a lever to reinvent, to change, to foster our relationship in urban area. So it's my pleasure to welcome Thomas Joly, who really rocked our lives during the ceremony of the Olympic Games in 2024. You made sure that the Sleeping Beauty of Paris just woke up, and it was quite a woke up. We had such a great time. And Paris was just reinvented, it thrived, it was beautiful, but it was also young, provocative, and you know, I think it was quite a tribute to all the history of France, while always also looking forward. So please, Thomas, join me on the scene.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I could watch it all day, to be frank. So basically, Thomas, the phrase réenchanter la ville, to re-enchant the city, which is really what you did, feels especially resonant today. What does it mean to you, and how can art and culture help us rediscover a sense of wonder and belonging in urban life?
Well, I am an actor and I am also a stage director, and I noticed that human beings maybe need two things. The first one is to getting together, to be together for happiness. Like, I don't know, when we won football World Cup, for example, we go spontaneously in the streets. For sadness, maybe remember like when Notre Dame was burning, for example, everybody went out, and just cried of this event, or maybe attacks or well, whatever, or anger. Also in French, we have a lot of strikes. And so that's the first thing. And the other thing is to share together stories, because we are very sensitive about fictions. So theater maybe responds to these two needs. And also, maybe that's why Cities was built. And maybe that also the best idea was to bring the opening ceremony outside of the stadium, just to respond to these two needs, being together and share something, share emotion, share stories. So, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Thank you. So effectively, with the Paris 2024 Olympic ceremonies, you brought, in fact, culture, and you brought the city into a stage which was really giving back to everybody around the city the opportunity to be part of that ceremony. What was your vision behind bringing culture out of theaters and into public space? And what did you learn about the relationship between art and the city through that experience?
Well, first, we have the chance that Paris is a very artistic city and art is everywhere. Like Victor Hugo said, for example, Notre-Dame de Paris is like a book for people in the medieval time, a book made of stone. And all the images and the characters on the facade of the Notre-Dame is like a story telling to the audience. So art is everywhere, architecture, paintings, well, everywhere. So I had the chance just to catch all that art everywhere, and for each monument, each building, just to catch also what story is each building tell to us. I'm sorry for my English. Is it clear?
It is very clear.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And we made the story with them, with the monuments, with the buildings, with also all the story of photography, cinema, music, paintings. We have the chance of that. For example, the Pont Neuf was spent by Turner, but also by Monet. So all that matière, all the materials, we bring all that, and we just tell the 12 tableaux of the ceremonies. And yes, it's like we didn't want, because I was not alone. We didn't want to put something. We really want to take from the city what the city just tell to us with the history, but also for the future, and not to make like a beautiful postcard, because okay, Paris is beautiful, but it's time, Olympic ceremonies are a moment where a very big part of the world is synchronized. Like, I don't know, I think it's 3 billion of people just watch the ceremony the night of the 26th of July. So we are synchronized. It was the moment just to say something to humanity and what Paris wanted to say to us. That was the point of our artistic direction.
Thank you. The ceremonies were both a celebration of heritage and statement to modernity. How did you approach the balance between telling the story of the city of the past and the desire to look forward?
Like I just said, history is here, with stones, with all the monuments and the buildings, but we wanted also to put Paris in the present. So, for example, when we decided to ask Aya Nakamura to sing in front of the Institut de France, who is the temple of the French language, it was like to make sense between the history and the present. Because, I don't know if you know that, but Aya Nakamura is a French singer, the most international French singer we have, but she's also attacked because of game with words in his language. But for me, it's like Charles Aznavour. That's why also we put a little part of the Charles Aznavour song inside a moment, because he played with words like a lot of poets and a lot of singers who play with words. That's I think that's the art of music and of writing. So we decided to put her in front of the Institut de France, just to, and with also, La Garde Républicaine with the orchestra, you know, the military orchestra. So just to tell, look, you think that 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 two kind of music and also the past and the present can't speak to each other, but it's not true. Look, this is beautiful, this is surprising and also emotional. And at this moment, I hope, but I think it what happened. Young people who love Aya Nakamura, but also people who like more the academic music, like the Garde Républicaine or things like that, just can be together, could like together. It's the same example with the Conciergerie, who was in a lot of, there is a lot of story about this monument, but it was also the prison of Marie Antoinette. So we can, at this point of Paris, speak about the revolution, the French Revolution, but also the revolution of love and bodies and feelings. That's why we put a metal band and also the opera, just to say, look, these two kind of music can also be together. And it's more like than that, because the French singer Marina Viotti, who was singing Carmen Bizet, Carmen, l'amour est un oiseau rebelle. I worked with her in the Opéra Bastille, and she told me before Olympics, and she told me, you know, I am an opera singer, but also I can sing metal music. I was like, really? And because it's for her the same technique inside her throat. So I was like, okay, we think that's different, but it's so close. So maybe we can just show that. And it was also the same with Baroque music and breakdance and blah, blah, blah. Just to make a connection, an intermission between the past and the present, the city and the living arts, and also inside living arts, bridges between a lot of different kind of music.
Thank you so much. Beyond major events like the Olympics, how can cultural creation help cities become more livable and resilient? Not just places to inhabit, but to share and imagine together.
This question just reminds me how the Greeks in the antiquity built their cities. They made first a stadium and a theater. And I love this idea. And also, how do you say when you have a contravention?
A fine.
Okay. If you didn't go to the theater at this antique time, you had a
fine.
A fine?
Yeah, a fine.
You paid if you don't go to the theater, and I love this idea. And that's, I think it's really interesting to just understand that Greek people, when they built city, just thought about first being together, like I said, in a stadium, just to celebrate something together, and also to tell a story for all the cities. So, and after that, they build houses and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's a really good idea because first they just invent democracy. It's not a little invention. And also the spirit of our culture. And I think big events like sport or culture can just make cities more desirable. And we saw, not just for Olympics, but we saw just after that in Toulouse, in the south of France, there was a company of giant puppets called Les Machines de Lille, and they brought a giant in the cities, walking in streets, and 1 million people just came in the streets just to see this giant puppet. So we have something with the city. We want just to have imagination and more something that we can share with feelings and also with like spectacularity. That's clear, yeah. And for that, because culture is everywhere, but we think it's just something more, but no, in each stone you have a face, and in each bridge, each lampadaire, I don't know, each poteau, everywhere in the city you have something, a flower, the végétaux, etc. So culture is everywhere. We just have to see it and also to share it together.
Yeah, it's really a catalyst, in fact, for uniting people and sharing and living together. Finally, if you had to imagine the city of 2050 through the eyes of an artist, what kind of city would you hope to see, and what role would art play in shaping it?
Maybe a theater in the center, maybe a big one, like in Angers City, for example, and I think beauty, feelings, and just to be culture just bring us. It's a tool to just understand what we are living right now together, not to say just think that or think that, but just don't forget to think, because it's a complicated time. The world is very big and very also complicated with the news, and so we have to be together just to understand what we are living now. And each people can go home and just have his own thoughts about that. So cities, because we are together, we have to maybe just have that kind of tools everywhere, and also tools where everybody can go, like to be, this is a political decision, but just to make tickets cheaper, and for making more people coming inside the buildings, the theater, the opera, and blah blah. Because really we need to have like discernement. I don't know how to say that in English, but to discern, it works, yeah? To discern in the very complicated time we have together. Culture is just here for that, and I think cities just help us to understand each other and to be, I hope, more comfortable and happier together.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you for enchanting us. So I'm going to welcome Christophe Béchu. He's nice enough to allocate some time for us. He's going to do the wrap-up of the conference. Christophe Béchu, our former Minister for Transition, Ecological Transition and Territorial Cohesion, and currently Mayor of Angers.
It's not very smart to just go on the stage after Thomas Joly. Because just after the second panel, I feel I could speak about adaptation, sustainability, resilience, but when you just invite a city manager after a magician, it becomes difficult to make a comparison. And I am worried because just before, 1 hour ago, when I just meet Thomas, I was very confident. He just said to me, I won't speak in English. I have to speak in French because my English is not fluent enough. And so I thought my English would be fantastic after his French. And he decided to speak it in English very fluently. So I had written something, but just after Thomas, I just decided to change totally what I could say. Perhaps it's the inspiration of the red dress of Gwenola Chambon, or the mood here, or just his speech, but okay, let's feel the metaphor. To allow the magic in a city, you have to work on backstages. And all of us, especially Vauban infrastructure partners, are the specialists of backstage for the city theater. And the backstage area needs a lot of work and money. because we have some aging infrastructures built in Europe, built decades ago, and fought for less people than the number we are today. Half of the humanity lives in cities, and it will be 70% in 20 years. And cities are in the front line of all the pressures: environmental, economical, social, and global warming is adding a lot of new challenges. At the end of the day, we have some solutions to face it. You see, Thomas is French because in a 10-minute speech, he proposed a new tax, a new fine. It's a national sport today in my country, and it's not a good news, because with individualism, I'm sure that we have to imagine system not for taxpayers, but for users. And it's why we need to create alliance between funds and cities. I share the opinion. We have a lot of dormant assets in our cities who can be changing by technology, by new uses, realizing we don't have a second planet to develop our humanity. At this moment, we are finalizing the greatest smart city project in France with Equance. It's more than 100 million of euro investment in my city of Angers, 300,000 inhabitants. And we could present it in January with a lot of possibilities to reduce our water consumptions, to reduce cars in the city, etc. For one reason. Because at the end of the day, the resilience is not only from infrastructures, but for people. And the politeness, the courtesy, the life together is easier when infrastructures organize the ability for each people to have his own life, to have easier services, to have a simple solution to move, to consume. And just to finish, because a time life is only 800,000 hours. And so I try to make short speeches, taking only a short part of your own life and of mine, because as a politician, the hours of speech with less talents than theater or Olympics is a reality. So to finish it and to prove, you have to hear what I say. I am the one. It will be perhaps part of my biography. I am the one who convinced Thomas Joly to become the theater director of Angers before the Olympics. And so it's a circular economy too. Thank you for Vauban, and we have to work together to work on backstage and to allow new magicians, new emotions, and to create this feeling of humanity, which is absolutely crucial to struggle with global warming. Thank you very much.
Just a few words to thank you all for actually your attention. I hope you had a great morning with great panelists. So thank you to all of you for the great discussion that we had, to the keynote speech and the different debates. We are hosting a cocktail, and we hope that you will join us in this think tank. We have created it for exactly that very purpose, about collaborative discussions, about bridging gaps, about working together. There are so many challenges that we have to overcome together. let's try to make the most of it and join our think tank Infravision. Thank you.